The hum of fluorescent lights echoed softly in the break room of the Veterans Care Services building in Dayton, Ohio. The scent of burnt coffee lingered in the air, mingling with the faint musk of old uniforms and cleaning supplies. The office was usually quiet this early in the morning, until the sharp sound of heels clicking against the vinyl floor shattered the stillness. Rebecca Vane Blackridge, Director of Operations, moved fast. Her tailored blazer flared behind her as she opened the glass door with a force that matched the fire in her eyes. She was ready for confrontation. The reports had gone unread. The kitchen was left unlocked again, and someone had apparently let that old dog back into the main office space. Her lips were already parting to launch into a tirade, but the words never came. Instead, Rebecca froze. Her entire body stiffened at the sight before her. Sitting alone in the corner of the room, beside the aging coffee maker, was Tom Gallagher, a Vietnam veteran in his early 70s. His silver hair was neatly combed, and he wore a soft gray sweater over a checkered shirt, like always. But today he looked older, smaller. His eyes were downcast, and in his arms rested a large German shepherd, Max. The dog's head lay on Tom's chest, unmoving, as if trying to disappear into him. His tail didn't wag. He didn't even lift his ears. Rebecca's breath caught in her throat. Max hadn't been assigned to anyone since his last handler passed away over a year ago. He had become a silent fixture in the background, a forgotten soul. People talked about finding him a home. Others suggested putting him down. No one ever asked how he was doing. And yet here he was, clinging to Tom like a lifeline. "He remembers," Tom murmured without looking up. His voice was gravelly, shaped by years of smoke, dust, and regret. The noise, the panic. He remembers all of it. The silence that followed was heavier than any lecture Rebecca had prepared. She took a step forward but hesitated. Something in the way Tom held that dog, it was sacred. Not desperate, but necessary. Two broken soldiers, one with scars on the inside, the other with scars that barked in nightmares. Rebecca stood there, heart pounding, unsure whether she just walked into a private moment or a forgotten war still being fought. And in that single, frozen moment, everything began to shift. Rebecca lingered at the edge of the room, her fingers still curled around the glass door handle. The air had changed, thicker now, like walking through fog. She watched as Tom ran a weathered hand along Max's back, slow and deliberate. The dog didn't flinch. His eyes were closed, lost in a place only Tom seemed to understand. There was no question anymore. This wasn't some sentimental moment. This was survival. She finally stepped forward, her voice softened despite herself. "Tom, you're not supposed to bring him in here." It was more routine than reprimand, like repeating a rule no one believed in anymore. Tom looked up. His eyes were tired, but sharp. Blue like stormy water, filled with things that hadn't been said in decades. "I didn't bring him," he replied, his voice low. "He found me. Same place he always does, out by the flagpole. Just stood there, like he was waiting for roll call." Tom gave a dry chuckle, but it didn't reach his eyes. Hell, maybe he was. Rebecca glanced toward the hallway. She didn't want anyone else seeing this. There were protocols, liability forms, but those concerns felt meaningless next to what she was witnessing. She pulled the door closed behind her, stepped inside, and took a seat at the far end of the table. "You served together?" she asked quietly, as if afraid the wrong tone might break the moment. Tom nodded. "Afghanistan, back when I was running security consults for private contractors." He was the only one who didn't flinch during that ambush in Kandahar. He scratched Max's ear gently. "We lost 3 guys that day. Max dragged one of them 20 feet under fire. That boy lived because of him." Tom's voice cracked just slightly. "And when I left, they left him too." Rebecca's heart tightened. She knew how bureaucracy worked. Dogs like Max were property, equipment, replaceable. But looking at the two of them now, 2 veterans discarded in different ways, it became clear how much was broken in that system. And suddenly, she didn't see a dog and a man. She saw 2 lives clinging to each other like pieces of the same wreckage. Tom looked at her again, his voice barely above a whisper. He doesn't have anyone. Neither do I. We remember the same things, and the same silence. And for the first time in a long while, Rebecca had no answer. Later that day, Rebecca sat alone in her office, staring blankly at the screen in front of her. The reports she had been meaning to complete were open, but untouched. Her hands were clasped tightly in her lap, her jaw clenched. Her mind wasn't in the present, not anymore. It was back in the break room, stuck on Tom's voice, stuck on Max's eyes that looked achingly familiar. She had seen those eyes before, not just on Max, but on someone else, her father. Arthur Blackridge, decorated Marine, retired in silence. He had never talked much about his deployments, and when he did, it was vague, mechanical. But sometimes, during the worst of his nightmares, he'd wake up screaming names no one in the family recognized. Names of men, places, and once a dog. She remembered that night vividly. She had been 13, standing in the hallway, too afraid to go in. Her mother had tried to calm him, but all he kept yelling was, "Don't leave the dog! Don't leave the dog!" At the time, Rebecca thought it was just another one of his episodes. Now she wasn't so sure. Something about the way Tom held Max. It mirrored that same haunted desperation her father used to carry. Opening the bottom drawer of her desk, she pulled out a faded leather folder. It was her father's old service records, something she had kept more out of sentiment than curiosity. Flipping through the pages, she scanned names, dates, locations. Her eyes landed on a name underlined in fading red ink. Gallagher, Thomas E. Her breath caught. She reread the line twice. It was a debrief report from a joint mission in 2007. Gallagher was listed as an external security advisor, and scribbled beside his name, in her father's handwriting, were two words, "Trust's dog." Rebecca leaned back slowly, stunned. This wasn't just coincidence. Her father had worked with Tom, maybe even with Max. But why had no one ever told her? Why had Tom never said anything? The knot in her stomach twisted tighter. She stood, paced once across the room, then turned back toward her desk with a resolve she hadn't felt in years. There was more to this story, and now she needed answers. Not just for Max, not just for Tom, but for her father, and whatever truth he took to the grave. Rebecca found him sitting outside on the back bench behind the building, where the fading sunlight hit the cracked pavement in long golden streaks. Max lay curled at Tom's feet, ears twitching at every sound, but otherwise motionless. It was quiet, the kind of quiet that carried things too heavy to say indoors. She stood behind him for a moment before finally speaking. "My father knew you," she said softly, not as a question, but as a statement. Tom didn't move. "Arthur Blackridge," he replied without hesitation. "He saved my life. Twice." Rebecca walked over and sat beside him, close but not too close. "You were on a mission together in 2007. Kandahar. His notes had your name." She looked at Max, and something about a dog. Tom let out a low sigh, and his eyes wandered to the tree line beyond the parking lot. "It wasn't supposed to happen that way. That night, we were sweeping a compound. Intel was bad. There were civilians inside, kids, and a bomb wired to a door that didn't exist on the blueprint." His voice cracked. "Your father caught it too late. We lost the comms and Max." He looked down at the dog, who hadn't moved. He froze. Rebecca's eyebrows knit together. "What do you mean?" Tom finally turned to face her. "He didn't bark. Not once. Not when the alarm was tripped. Not when the explosion went off. Not even after we pulled your dad out of the rubble. He just stood there, shaking, like he knew the sound of death too well to challenge it anymore." He paused. "We weren't sure he'd ever come back from that." The silence hung heavy again. Rebecca could barely reconcile the image of the strong, dignified man she knew as her father with the raw, damaged reality of that night. And Max, the loyal companion, had failed? Or had he simply broken the way all of them had in some way or another? "I used to think he was weak," Tom said quietly, almost to himself. "But now I know." He was just tired of being the only one left standing. Rebecca felt something shift inside her. Maybe this wasn't just about duty or memory. Maybe this was about healing for all of them. And as Max opened one tired eye and looked up at her, she couldn't help but wonder what else he remembered, and what else he had refused to say, by simply staying silent. The next morning, Rebecca arrived at the center before anyone else. The hallway lights flickered on as she walked slowly toward the old storage room at the back of the building, a space barely touched in years. She didn't know exactly what she was looking for, only that something inside her had shifted after the conversation with Tom. Her father had secrets, and maybe one of them was still hiding here. The room smelled of dust and aged cardboard. Shelves lined with old training manuals, boxes labeled in faded Sharpie, and rows of forgotten belongings stacked from years of quiet goodbyes. Rebecca moved carefully, pulling one box after another down, scanning the labels. Her fingers paused on a worn-out crate labeled Blackridge, Personal Effects. Inside was nothing remarkable at first. A rusted compass, a broken wristwatch, a pair of worn gloves. But at the very bottom, hidden beneath an old flannel shirt, she found it. A dented Maxwell House coffee can, sealed with yellowing tape. Her heart pounded as she peeled the lid off. Inside, there was a folded envelope, water-stained and brittle with age. The handwriting was her father's. It read, "To be opened if I don't come back. For Rebecca." Her hands trembled as she opened it. The letter wasn't long, but it cut deep. Arthur wrote about the things he couldn't bring himself to say in person. About fear, about guilt, and about Max. He described a moment in the desert when everything collapsed, and how he saw himself not as a hero, but as a man too broken to be one. "They'll say I was brave," he wrote, "but the truth is, it was that dog who held me together. Not medals, not pride, just Max." Rebecca wiped her eyes and read the final line 3 times before it sank in. "If he's still alive, take care of him. He's more human than most of us ever were." The air in the room felt heavier. All this time, Max hadn't just been another dog in the facility. He had been family, a silent keeper of her father's truth. And somehow he had waited all these years for someone to remember. She closed the can, holding it against her chest like it might disappear. Her father had never come home completely, but a part of him had stayed behind, waiting inside the heart of a forgotten dog. Later that afternoon, Rebecca stood at the entrance of the common room, holding the dented coffee can close to her chest. The building buzzed with its usual quiet rhythms, wheelchairs rolling softly across tile, distant voices from a television playing reruns of old war documentaries. But inside her, everything was different now. The letter had cracked something open. She couldn't unsee it. She couldn't unknow it. Tom sat by the window, staring out toward the flagpole again. Max was beside him, motionless, as if fused to the floor. Rebecca walked slowly toward them, and as she approached, Tom turned his head without surprise. Maybe he'd been expecting her. Or maybe grief recognized itself when it entered a room. "I found this," she said, placing the coffee can gently on the table in front of him. "It was hidden with my father's things. He wrote it for me, about Max, about that night." Tom looked down at the can, his face unreadable. He didn't touch it. "He kept it?" he asked softly. "All these years?" Rebecca nodded. "He wanted me to take care of Max, if he was still alive." Her voice broke slightly. "He said Max was more human than most of us ever were." There was a long pause before Tom spoke again. He was right. He looked at Max, then slowly reached out and placed a hand over the can, as if it were a fragile relic. "Your father was a good man. Broken, yeah, but good. Max never forgot him." Rebecca knelt down in front of Max, looking him in the eyes. "Max," she said, her voice low and steady, "come with me." The old dog didn't hesitate. For the first time since she'd known him, Max stood up without being commanded. He walked to her side, tail low but wagging ever so slightly. And in that quiet, wordless moment, something passed between them. Recognition, trust, maybe even love. As Tom watched them, he smiled. Not the kind of smile you wear on the outside. It was small, barely there, but real, the kind that comes from watching a weight finally lift from someone else's shoulders. And somewhere deep inside both man and dog, a war that had never truly ended finally began to quiet. That night, Rebecca didn't sleep much. The house was quiet, colder than usual, as October winds scraped softly against the windows. The sounds of the world outside seemed distant and meaningless, but just beyond her bedroom door, lying curled against the wood floor like a silent guardian, was Max. No crate, no leash, just presence. She had given him a blanket and a soft cushion, expecting him to curl up somewhere in the living room. But Max had followed her down the hallway and stopped right at her door. When she closed it, he stayed. No whining, no scratching, just stillness, like he was returning to a duty he had once promised someone else. Rebecca sat up in bed, unable to shake the image. She'd seen it before, years ago, as a teenager, when her father returned from deployment. Max wasn't the same dog, she had always assumed. But now, she wasn't so sure. What if this was the same dog? What if Max had found his way back, not by chance, but by memory? In the morning, she opened the door slowly. Max looked up but didn't move. His eyes were clear, focused, old, but awake in a way they hadn't been in years. She knelt beside him and ran her fingers gently through his fur. "You knew him," she whispered. "Didn't you?" Max leaned into her hand, and for a moment, Rebecca could feel something pass through him. Not just loyalty, something older, something deeper. It was as if he carried not only her father's scent, but his pain, his silence, his need to be remembered. At the center later that day, Tom was different. Paler, weaker. He sat wrapped in his old army coat, hands trembling slightly, eyes distant. "You took him home," he said quietly when he saw her. "Good." Rebecca nodded, her voice catching. "He stayed at my door all night, like he's done it before." Tom gave a slow, tired smile. "Because he has. He remembers where love used to live." And just like that, Rebecca realized something that struck her to the core. Max wasn't just carrying memories. He was keeping promises. By the end of the week, Tom had stopped coming to the common room. His chair sat empty by the window, and the folded blanket he always brought for Max remained untouched in the corner. Rebecca found him in the infirmary, lying beneath thin white sheets, his skin pale against the pillow, his breathing shallow and uneven. Max stood beside the bed, unmoving, no wagging tail, no sound, just his eyes, locked on Tom, watching every slow rise and fall of the man's chest like it was the ticking of a fragile clock. The nurses had tried to move him earlier, but Max wouldn't budge. He hadn't eaten in 2 days. He was waiting. Rebecca sat on the other side of the bed, holding Tom's hand. "I brought the letter," she said gently. "The one my father left me. I think he wanted you to read it too." Tom didn't answer right away. His eyes fluttered open, and he looked at her. Not with surprise, but with peace. "Your father, he carried everyone's pain but his own," he murmured. "That dog. He was the only thing that kept him human." Rebecca nodded, tears already filling her eyes. "Max never left him, did he?" "No," Tom whispered. "And he shouldn't see me leave either." She froze. "Tom, promise me," he said, more firmly than she expected. "When it happens, take him out. Let him remember me strong. Let him remember me sitting under the sun, with his head on my knee." His voice was fading now, thin and weak. "Don't let him watch me go." Max whined softly, the first sound he had made in hours. His head lowered beside the bed, and Rebecca knew. He already felt it coming. She stood, bent down, and gently clipped the leash to Max's collar. For a moment, the dog resisted, his body tensing. But then he looked up at her, and followed. As they stepped into the hallway, Rebecca glanced back one last time. Tom's eyes were closed now, peaceful, ready. And Max walked beside her with slow, deliberate steps, like a soldier being pulled away from his post. The center held a small memorial the next morning. No big speeches, no uniforms, just a folded flag, a few photos of Tom from his younger days, and a chair left empty by the window where he used to sit. Most of the staff attended quietly, standing in silence as the flag outside was lowered to half-mast. A few veterans saluted. Some wiped their eyes. Rebecca stood off to the side, Max sitting calmly beside her. The old dog hadn't barked, hadn't whimpered, hadn't touched his food since Tom passed the night before. He just stayed near the last place they had been together, like he was waiting for the man to return with a coffee in one hand and a biscuit in the other. As the final words of the service were spoken, Max stood, slowly, but with purpose. His head lifted toward the flag as it dropped halfway down the pole, and Rebecca felt her chest tighten. While others mourned with bowed heads, Max remained upright, still, quiet, present, like a sentinel who refused to abandon his post. Later that afternoon, Rebecca walked with Max to the back garden where Tom used to sit in the late hours, watching the trees. The same bench, the same light. She sat down, and Max rested his head on her lap without a sound. She looked up at the sky and whispered, "He didn't want you to see him go." Max didn't move, but a low, soft exhale escaped him, something that sounded almost like a sigh, not of sadness, but of understanding. And maybe, just maybe, acceptance. Rebecca reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small object she had kept hidden during the service. Tom's military ID tag. On the back, barely visible, was a second engraving Rebecca hadn't noticed before. "For the one who stays." She gently slipped the chain around Max's neck, tucking it under his thick fur. "You stayed," she whispered. "You stayed for him. You stayed for me. And now, I think you can rest." But Max didn't rest. Not yet. He stayed beside her long after the sun dipped behind the trees. Silent, steady, still watching for the man who never broke a promise to him, because some soldiers never stop guarding what matters. Weeks passed, and autumn gave way to the quiet chill of early winter. Leaves scattered across the parking lot of the Veterans Center, carried by winds that whispered through the bare trees. Life moved forward inside the building, slowly, respectfully, but something had undeniably changed. Tom Gallagher's absence left a silence deeper than words. And yet, in that silence, something else had begun to take root. Rebecca found herself walking different paths now. Ones she used to avoid. She lingered in the garden where Tom used to sit. She spent time reading old files her father had written, piecing together a man she never truly knew. And every evening, Max followed her home, loyal as ever, but quieter, older, with eyes that now held peace instead of pain. One morning, as snow began to fall for the first time that season, Max didn't wait by the door. Rebecca found him curled up beside the bench in the garden. Tom's bench. She called his name softly, once, twice. No response. But he wasn't gone. He was just still. She knelt beside him, placing a hand gently over his fur. His body was warm, breathing steady, but something about him told her he wasn't coming home that night. Not in the way he had before. Max looked up at her with eyes that had seen too much and held her gaze for a long time. And then he rested his head back down against the wooden leg of the bench. He had chosen. This was where he belonged, where he would wait. Not for rescue, not for orders, but simply to remember. To finish the promise he'd once made to two men who carried more silence than most could bear. Max didn't need a bed, or a roof, or a command. He had found his post.
Rebecca didn't try to move him. She sat beside him as snow dusted the bench, brushing gently across his back. She whispered stories to him, about her father, about Tom, about everything that would have made them proud. And when Max finally closed his eyes that night, he didn't move again. But he wasn't gone. He had simply stayed.